Welcome, guys. We are dealing with real estate brokerage and agency topics today, and our guest today in our studio is Drew Abysalh from Boston Luxe Real Estate, a premier real estate firm located in Boston's Back Bay on Newbury Street. Drew has been in the business for a number of years, and we've invited him today to sort of discuss brokerage with you, discuss seller's agency, talk about buyer's agency, their company's philosophy to training, and hopefully be able to give you guys some real information about how an actual firm is operating and sort of their philosophy and their approach when it comes down to these topics. You've been watching our modules and learning about the fundamentals and reviewing these fundamentals if you're utilizing these courses as continuing education topics. So hopefully in today's discussion, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about the actual applications. A lot of you are in the business and some of you are thinking about getting into the business. Drew's firm is located on Newbury Street, and his contact information will be available to you at the end of this broadcast if you do want to reach out to him with questions in general. So Drew, thank you for coming in today.
No problem.
Just a couple of questions. First off, tell us a little bit about your firm and sort of your philosophy when it comes to brokerage practice in general.
Absolutely. So, I started me and my business partner. We started the firm about 5 years ago now, and when we merged, we decided that we wanted to build something that was different. We saw a lot of the different brokerages that were out there, and just really didn't like the practices, the way that they were. So we decided to do a brokerage that was based on client relations first. That was our main mission statement when we started. We said, what we believe is if you do right by the client, you will be inundated with referrals, repeat business, and continuing so forth. So that's really one of the biggest principles that we train. With being more of a boutique label, if you will, we're on the larger size. We're tipping 30 to 40 agents at this point now, but we still maintain our boutique status. We really focus on training agents, really focus on developing them and having them grow with us, as opposed to a lot of different philosophies out there. When it comes to real estate in general, just good practices are probably one of the biggest things that we train. The idea of making sure that the client's priorities are put first. The commissions will come after. Making sure that not only putting a transaction together, but making sure it's exactly what the client wants, what they need, what they're looking for, and help facilitating that. That's some of our biggest principles that we work with.
The definition of brokerage is bringing parties together in a real estate transaction. When your organization is involved in a transaction and you're bringing parties together and you have those parties, it could be representing one side, it could be representing both sides in the transaction. What do you feel fundamentally is the key to that intermediary in the middle? What is the essence of what brokerage is?
One of the biggest things about brokerage that I like to train and really make sure that all of my people know, we're kind of the grease that keeps everything moving. When it comes to just introducing the buyer and the seller, or just the property to the buyer, that's the easy part. Finding the property, I believe, is actually the easiest part of the real estate transaction. Making sure that the attorneys are speaking, making sure that as a transaction is going, your client is covered from A to Z. These are the things that really real estate agents really do if they do it well. When it's between the buyer's agent and the seller's agent, making sure that they're working as a cohesive unit. Even though they're representing two different sides, they want to make sure that their clients are settling in the same exact spot. Because if not, that's how deals can go bad, and a buyer can lose the home that they wanted, and the seller can lose the buyer that was paying the price that they were hoping for. And these are probably one of the biggest things that, if they work together and see to the end, that's one of the biggest things that real estate brokers really bring to the table.
What's your philosophy on, or your impression of technology, and the adage that, or the logic that potentially the technology will ultimately kill the physical brokerage operation?
Mm-hmm.
Large operations, such as Berkshire Hathaway, are getting very involved right at this point, and they're really growing across the country right now as far as their brokerage presence. So obviously there's a side of the world of investors that believe that the brokerage business is here to stay. And obviously we're looking at home prices in various markets, and things are very, very, very hot in certain markets. They're flat in other markets, but you still see the standard brokerage operations, and you still see this longevity or this long-standing operation in brokerage. Do you think that brokerage is something that could be phased out by technology, or do you think that technology will help support or complement it, but not eradicate it?
So the biggest thing that I can say is that we've really embraced the technology side. I actually tell people that I believe that we're a technology company who does real estate, because that's one of the biggest things of our presence online on bostonlux.com, and we actually want our clients to do searches online, really see what they're looking for. I do not believe that technology will replace agents, because there is one very important intangible piece of real estate is there's a feeling that a buyer needs to have when they walk into a home. If we lived in a box with 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor, and they were all the same exact thing, it's just based on where it was located, okay, I could see the idea of people being able to be phased out of it. If you send a client 5 listings that in your mind are almost identical, they hate 2 of them, one of them they absolutely love, and the other 2 they're okay with, that's purely based on a taste. A lot of clients don't even know exactly what their tastes are. I brought many clients to a high-rise building, and they said, I'm not really a view person. And I walk them into their top floor, and they say, oh my God, I have to have this, I love the view. I've walked in many clients I've walked into, and they said, I really, I don't like X, and I show them X, they're like, oh, I had no idea how much I liked X. So in the simplest answer I'd say is that technology is phenomenal. It allows everything to be real time, but the biggest piece is about real estate of why these aren't just an investment. Investment is an enormous piece of this, but it's also a home. It has to be your own castle. So I think, technology can help facilitate it. It can make it so much better, so much more efficient. But I can't see the real estate agent ever being phased out of the transaction.
Okay, that's great. As far as your approach to training, I'm a big proponent of education in real estate training. When students take my course, I think what makes us different than a lot of other operators is sort of our dedication to that training and the fundamentals and the rudiments of real property. So I really believe that a good, successful agent must be, there must be a foundation in understanding the essence of what they're doing. And I know that our discussions in the past have shown me that you are definitely a big proponent of education and training when it comes down to training your agents.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about your brokerage training, and talk a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to new agents coming in, and how you can help cultivate their experiences with your training into something that's pretty special.
Absolutely. So some of the biggest things about training is I think that an agent not only needs to understand why they're doing certain things, or not understand what to do, but the biggest thing is understanding the why behind a lot of things. Our manual at this point, I think, is about 70 pages that we've written from scratch. I think we're on version 10 at this point, because real estate's always ever changing, always evolving. The biggest things that I really try to train agents on is understanding that knowledge is key. To take a client out to a certain area, to be able to run comps, to be able to, whether they're doing rentals or they're doing sales, if they don't have the knowledge behind it, they're simply a glorified tour guide. And what people don't see in real estate agents, or they don't realize it's there, is we're not paid on time. It's not an hourly basis. The difference with it, that what it comes down to, is in order for me to make a educated decision for my clients today, for the last year I had to be doing my research, going into all the other units that are similar, learning from different transactions, learning from all the different properties. So when I see a certain kind of central air system, or I see a water tank that's going in the home inspection, I can put either raise flags or put my clients at ease, depending on what the right solution is, for the problem that's at hand. So in understanding all of the bases behind what has to happen, understanding all your options, a client can spend, whether it's a high amount, low amount, or everything in between, whether we're talking about buying or we're talking about selling or we're talking about renting, you have to have that knowledge to say, okay, for my X amount of dollars, for what I want to have, I want to accomplish this lifestyle. And that's what real estate is. Real estate is a lifestyle that a client is trying to accomplish. For my X amount of dollars, is this the best lifestyle that I can accomplish? And if the real estate agent hasn't done their homework, then they're of very little use to the client. Once
So
they
you feel
get to that point.
training will ultimately lead them to better understanding the client to deliver that lifestyle.
Absolutely. The way that I train is of our particular city. I've cut our city up into different sections, and each day we take a different section and learn the different boutiques, because it's not about seeing a nice unit, advertising it, and having a client come take it. It's about understanding, okay, if I lived here, what is my lifestyle like? What is where do I do my groceries? Where's the pharmacy? How do I live when I'm not working? What is my life like? And that seems to be, especially in a metropolitan city, those are the real questions that people may not even know to ask.
Sure.
But that's what they're really looking for.
The concept of a fiduciary obligation. So fiduciary obligation basically means that we as brokers or we as agents owe our clients various traditional duties, and we have to maintain that integrity, not only for the ethical standpoints but also the legal standpoints. We don't want to violate that. That's a big problem. How do you approach training a new agent about things like confidentiality, disclosure, obedience, loyalty, and care, those types of things? Obviously, the accountability function, the operation, the brokerage firm itself is really handling for the agent. All money is always turned over to you guys operationally, and you guys are dealing with those aspects of it and notifications. But how do you approach fiduciary obligations, keeping confidentiality? Let's say if Boston Lux is involved as a designated agent transaction, where you guys are representing not only sellers but buyers in the same operation.
Absolutely. The biggest core of what we train, what we believe, the entire brokerage, the concept behind it, is really understanding that this is where, when I was mentioning before, about putting the commissions aside. I don't even know what the commission is until the day before closing. And the way that's actually a big amount of how I train, because whether you don't rent a $1,000 studio or don't sell a $5 million home, you make the same commission. So we make that nice and simple on day one.
Right.
The biggest things that I want to explain to people when dealing with your responsibilities is, if you do right by the client, your career will go further. If this transaction doesn't happen because you had to pull your client out of it because of whatever reason that existed, there will be another transaction that happens down the road. And more than likely, there'll be probably multiple transactions that happen because you looked out for your client. They will be the first one to tell their mother, brother, son, daughter, friend, hey, my client, not only did my broker help me with this one, but they actually pulled me out of this other one that I should have never been part of, even though we did all this work and he didn't make a single dime on, and actually, made sure he didn't get a commission by making sure I walked away from the property, because that was the right thing to do by me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it. As far as awareness and disclosure, when we're, many consumers don't realize when they walk into a real estate office, they're not sure when they talk to somebody who they represent, what's really happening in that transaction. They might be walking in based off of an advertisement, they might be walking in because there's something that's advertised in the brokerage firm, or they might just be walking around randomly and come across your operation.
Absolutely.
As soon as they walk in, when they first personally meet you or one of your agents, how do you engage that consumer and disclose to them? I know we have this Massachusetts mandatory licensee consumer relationship disclosure form.
Absolutely.
And we know that we have to disclose it at first personal meeting when inquiring about specific properties. But how do you guys integrate that in real life? I mean, that's always a big question.
I for as many different things, my philosophy on real estate is extremely simple. And I don't try to butter things up. I don't try to do anything that's any different. When a client comes in, we do our introductory form, our agency disclosure form, right off the bat. And there's actually a twofold side to it. One, besides the fact legally we have to. The Board of Real Estate, tells us we want to. It's also my policies as well to make sure it happens. But it's also very important because, as much as I want to help my agents work with every single client that exists underneath the sun, it's also very important that the client wants to work with an agent as well. So I think it saves a lot of time and a lot of hassle to say up front, hey, listen, if we were to help you, we would represent you. We're the buyer side, or hey, I represent the seller. I need to disclose that I'm working on both sides of this transaction. Because if the client has a problem at this time, well, we just saved ourselves 60 days of just the worst transaction that could ever exist. Because if they don't want to work with you, they're not going to. So as opposed to dancing around the idea of, hey, listen, we charge a broker's fee when we do a rental, or hey, listen, we will collect a commission on selling this property. If they're not okay with that simple concept on this transaction, well, it's better off that we all just part ways and don't go any further, because all sides have to be happy about what's going on. The buyer's agent, the seller's agent, everyone has to have a good feeling throughout the whole transaction. So if a client's like, hey, listen, I don't want to work with an agent, I just simply want to ask for property, that's absolutely fine. You can do that, but I can only go so far within my legal limits, because I have a responsibility to A, tell you that that I would represent you, and B, I have to tell the other side as well, hey, listen, I'm speaking for my client. And if I don't have that power of being able to do that, I really can't represent you. It's how deals can go south very quickly when you don't have the correct representation in place. So as painful it might be to be in the very beginning, because it might cost a transaction from happening, in the long run, it will make you a much more successful agent.
It clarifies it. That's
Absolutely,
right.
no question.
We're here today with Drew Abysalh from Boston Luxe Real Estate, and we're discussing brokerage relationships. When we come back, we're going to be discussing his philosophy and understanding of seller's agency.